Welcome, everybody. Today we are going to be reviewing how to annotate, especially when we're thinking about a literary text, such as a short story or a novel or a poem, a play, that sort of thing. And just keep in mind that an informational text would be more like an essay or a letter or a news article. Okay, so to get us started, I wanted us to think about this aim. And I'm going to read it. And while I read it, I just want you to think about that aim and think about if you feel red, yellow, or green when it comes to annotation. So, how do we apply our annotation strategy to close read a literary text in a meaningful way? We have been reading a literary text. We've been reading The Great Gatsby, and as we read this text, I've been asking you to process what's happening in the text by doing your own gist trackers. Now, if you don't have a book that is your own, you can't take those marginal notes, and that's why I've given you what I call a gist tracker. And we're going to look at some examples of student work later on to see how comfortable you are in using your own gist trackers. So let's start by just looking at the poster. This poster is in our school, and we've learned the strategy, but you may not be agreeing with the strategy. So let's first think about how comfortable are you with recording a gist on the right-hand side of a text? Do you know what it means when I say chunk the paragraphs? Draw arrows to break out those pieces. And then how comfortable are you with using the noun strategy that I've taught you, where you ask yourself what each chunk is about? What type of noun is it? And then what is it about? And then do you know how to use symbols on the left-hand side and talk back to the text? Remember, it's not just about putting a symbol, it's about doing something actionable and processing the text at sort of a higher level. So if you think about it that way, the right side of the text, the gist, it's really about you comprehending. And the left side of the text, when you do symbols, that's where you do more analysis. So essentially, we just said gist is on the right and symbols are on the left. Let's take a look at an example and talk through that. Okay, so here is a stanza coming from a literary text, a poem, and what I've done is I have done the noun strategy on the right-hand side to process what it's about, and then I'll show you my symbol work on the next slide. So let's just read this chunk, and notice my baby arrow here electronically. If I had a pen, it would be a large arrow to pull out that chunk on the right-hand side. So she's going back these days, and I've underlined a couple of key phrases as I'm reading the chunk that I feel might be important in helping me get to the main idea using that noun strategy. She's going back these days to the great stories that charmed her younger mind. A shaded light shines. So when I read that, first I'm just like, okay, was that about a person, a place, a thing, or an idea? What type of noun is it? And so I read it, I thought about it, and I'm like, this is mainly about a person. And so I jot down person. Now, if you want to just go straight to it and put the noun, you might put a woman, right? So on the right-hand side underneath that, I've asked myself, what is it saying about the noun? What is it saying about the person? So I put, woman is rereading fave books from her childhood under a lamp. That's the idea that I have gathered in my own words, and I want to keep it as concise and brief as possible. I don't want to write long sentences here. So for you, it's a little bit longer right now in this example, just so you really understand my process and what I was thinking. But if this were my own paper, I would probably take out at least 2 more words. I would take out is and her. So let's read it again. Woman rereading fave books from childhood. under lamp. Now that is a phrase, a fragment. It is not a complete sentence. And I might even abbreviate some of these words like childhood, because this is about me getting the root of my idea down for myself in a clear and concise way so that I can comprehend and understand what this text is about. What about when we use symbols? So the same chunk, now I'm thinking of talking back to the text and analyzing. And so when I was reading this, I was a little puzzled when I thought about what was happening here. And so I put a question mark near where it says going back. And my question was, I'm puzzled. I'm thinking of books like Dr. Seuss or nursery rhymes, things like that. But she's going back to these texts that she read as a little girl. And I find it a little bit odd. So my question is, why is the narrator reminiscing? Is she depressed or lonely? I think it's a little unusual to be an adult and to go back to these childhood books. And it makes me wonder what's going on in this narrator's life that she's, I'm sorry, it should not say narrator, this character's life. What is going on in this character's life that's making her do this? Okay, and now I've examined the word charmed. So maybe I'm not really sure what that word means. So I'm using another symbol, which is the circle, where we circle vocabulary. And I'm not just going to circle the word and go on. I'm going to guess what it means. One common mistake is I see a lot of students circle words they don't know, and then they write that word in the margin. So that's not what you should do. You should be trying to infer what the word means. So I might cover it with my finger and try to reread the word and with a blank and sort of replace that blank. So that blank, her younger mind. And so I'm like, well, I think that sounds like that impressed her younger mind. I know it should be something positive that's happening for her. And so I could jot what I'm thinking there. You could also examine things that are important from what you've underlined and make other notes. So when I put she is older, I really felt that was important, and I'm missing my asterisk, my star. And so make sure if you're going to jot down something that is important, you put your little star. Okay, so let's pause and just think about how can our annotations help us improve our reading? Can you think of 3 ways? Hopefully you paused the video, thought of some things, and maybe you thought of things like, well, by doing annotation work, I am causing my brain to be active, and I'm going to avoid daydreaming and spacing out because I have to actively do something and think about what I'm reading. We've all read those books, right? Or those texts that a teacher has given us where we're like, God, I'm reading it, and you're not. You're just reading words. You're not really reading and thinking about what you're reading and understanding it. You're just reading words. Maybe you thought about it helps you understand what you're reading. Maybe you thought about, well, it helps me have a conversation with people about what I've read. I have something to share now. Maybe you thought about how it helps you pick up new vocabulary words because you really hone in to those words that you're not really familiar with and you're tracking them while you're going. There are many benefits, and hopefully you thought of a few. Let's take a look now at what a student did when he turned in his gist work for Chapter 5 of The Great Gatsby. So I'm going to show you a couple examples because this student does a great job of being green, okay? And I know that they understand the annotation strategy and that they also understand those first 5 pages of The Great Gatsby really, really well. Now, they did turn in their whole gist tracker, but I'm only going to show you a sample because I really want you to think through your own work if you're right now working on that as well. So the first thing I notice is, and we know with my gist tracker, I have the page number in the middle, and then the right side is the gist, and the left side is symbol work. I love that this student identified the nouns but they did not specify noun, colon, place. In this case, he just put the place, Gatsby's house. And it's correct. That page was about Gatsby's house. And then he's asking himself, what is it saying about Gatsby's house? It's so bright and active. Those are his own words. It is totally accurate with page 87. I love that on top of that, he is pondering the text here, and a question is coming to his mind. Is it normal for Gatsby's house to be so active? Now, although I love that he asked this question, I would say it's not truly the best debatable question, because I think the answer is yes, it is normal. We know that Gatsby often has parties. But let's look at some of his other examples. So the next page, he said it's mainly about a person, Nick. And he asked himself, what is it saying about Nick? What is it saying about the person or the noun? And he put, it's about tells Gatsby. In this case, if you think about it, he's saying Nick tells Gatsby that he will have Daisy come over. That's what that page is about. And that's true. If you read that page, it was a conversation. So this student had to read the conversation and process what was going on and be able, in his own words, to get to the root of it and the nutshell of what occurred. And that is what occurred. But beyond that, I love his question he's asking. How does Gatsby truly feel about having a poor friend? So it's almost like he's questioning, could Gatsby be using Nick for what he wants, right? To get his meeting with Daisy, to rekindle his little love affair with this woman. And is he truly friends with Nick? And so I think that's a great question to dig deeper into those characters. Let's look at one more. Again, he's identified that it's mainly about a person, and he says it's about Gatsby. And offers Nick a job but gets rejected. Beautiful. This is entirely in his own words. It's clear, concise, and to the point, and it is accurate. But his question is awesome. So what does Gatsby do for a living? We don't know. That's why it's a great question. I would love to see him perhaps take that further. Maybe he could use a check mark to talk about his prior knowledge of the 1920s and bootleggers and speculate as to maybe whether Gatsby is involved with this sort of activity. So in terms of looking at these students' work for clear examples of what solid gist should look like on the right-hand side, he has done a great job. I want you to really notice that he did not just list little facts from little tiny details of what happened off of those pages. He has looked at the main idea of those pages. And then one more thing we'll do is just look at the rubric that I've given you for when you do your annotation. And notice if I were going to score his work, and he did have a complete gist tracker, well, it's not blank or missing, so he doesn't get a 0. He did not copy the text. He didn't copy a fact from each page instead of the main idea. His work is not confusing. It's not incomplete or partial, so he doesn't get a 1, which is red. What about a 2, which is yellow-red? He didn't hardly paraphrase. He paraphrased everything. It was all his own words, so it's not unclear and confusing. So he can't get that level. What about a 3, a yellow? Somewhat paraphrased. No, it was all paraphrased. It's all in his own words. Was it too long? No. Was it surface level? Like he didn't really understand the main idea? No, he understands it. And it was not partial. So now we're looking at a 4 or 5. Clear original wording. Accurate based on the assigned pages. Gist tracker is complete. Absolutely. He definitely gets a 4. Let's see if I can give him a 5. Concise, clear, thought-provoking, original wording, accurate based on the assigned pages. Gist tracker is complete. Symbols may be done as well. optional. Well, you know what? Because he did the symbols, I'm going to give him a 5. I do think his work could be a little more thought-provoking when he does his gist on the right, but he definitely does get a 5 in my book. I hope that this was helpful and you now have a better understanding of how to do your own annotation work while you're reading a literary text.